Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cloud Wars Live. It's a podcast where we're digging into the digital revolution and the remarkable changes taking place in our personal lives, our professional lives, and really touching just about every one of the, 3.5, 4 billion people on the planet. So it is a fascinating time we're in right now, and we're delighted to have one of our monthly digital all-stars, Christian Anschuetz, with us today. Christian is an entrepreneur. He's been a CIO, a CDO. He's an adventurer, and he is also no longer active in the United States Marine Corps, but he left there as a captain, left active duty as a captain, served a couple of tours of duty, and really has some great ideas about leadership, inspiration, and so forth. So, Christian, it is always a pleasure to see you.
It's always a pleasure to be here, Bob. Good to see you, and hopefully, good to not see your listeners, but hopefully get some interactions subsequent to this getting published.
Absolutely, we'd love to see that. And Christian, I know one of the things that we wanted to talk about today was you've done this. You have led some of these big changes in your career. In the private sector, in the military, and so forth. But I wanted to just check in with you now, because over the past 2-3 months, I've spoken with a couple big businesses, not in the tech industry, where they've got some really good plans. The idea is to move forward, to really transform the company. But there's a certain cohort within the organization that just feels like, nope, we're going to dig in our heels, sort of over my dead body, that quiet sense of resistance to change. And I wanted to see if you'd share some ideas about what leaders should do in these times when really it's the right path for the organization. There are some people involved. How do you get those people, or can you get some of those people to go from being naysayers and sort of the Eeyores in the group? How do you get them over, if not fully fledged advocates for it, then at least they're not digging their heels in and almost trying to sabotage things?
Gosh, it's such a big topic. I mean, so earlier this year, maybe it's a publication that some people know. It's called Information Age. They released a study of a poll where they surveyed 500 C-level executives from Fortune 500 companies. And in that poll, they heard back that those C-level executives believe that 40% of the Fortune 500 would either cease to exist, or at least they certainly wouldn't be part of the Fortune 500 in just 10 years, with the supermajority of those even ceasing to exist in any meaningful fashion. So this is kind of important because, I mean, fundamental to this is, I mean, your question is couched in hey, the world is changing. Organizations have to be agile, have to change too, because if it was the status quo, you wouldn't be asking that question, right? And so I give that because the powers and the forces of change are so strong that they're going to, at least according to that poll, wipe the slate clean of 40% of the Fortune 500 off the map, so to speak. Again, according to 500 folks from Fortune 500 companies. Incumbents, while they have so many different advantages, established brands, positions in the market, they can be well capitalized, they have capabilities and workforces, they have all sorts of assets. And they also have a real big problem, and that's their legacy. Mm-hmm. And they could look at, in this context, a lot of people here listen to you because it's technology related. So they might think legacy technology systems. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's some of those. I mean, they're all legacies, at some point, as is true also for, the core capabilities. But the number one legacy that gets in the way actually is the mindset legacy. Yeah. This is what we do, and this is the way we do it. And if you can't demonstrate to me that it's broke, let's not fix it. Yeah. And for most people on the ground who are doing their job, they don't see that it's any more broke tomorrow than it is today. And so they really don't have much of an incentive to fix it. And so I guess what I'm saying, and it's kind of a long way of getting to the point, the number one thing that's responsible for these companies getting outmaneuvered in the marketplace is their lack of, I'll say it, good leadership. because these companies have capabilities. These companies have they have money, they have resources, and they're still going to get outmaneuvered. We're seeing it happen, and it's fundamentally because of leadership. They'll say, "Oh, it's because of the market forces." They'll say, "Because of this, we couldn't get our workforce to make the adjustment." Those are all someone's responsible for that. It's not. There's no forces out there that that are wiping these companies out. We're allowing it to happen. And so I'll pause here well, let me conclude here and then pause and say, if leaders are serious about this not happening, they start looking at culture and the sort of the intellectual and emotional agility that their culture needs as not a part of their strategy, but actually the strategy itself. And most companies are not nearly deliberate about that. Strategy, culture is just a thing that happens. It's just a thing we have. We don't really control it. Or if we do anything with it, it's HR creating some nice PowerPoints to stick on a wall. However, they don't actually do anything with culture. They just believe that maybe they are. And anyway, I'll pause. You could tell you this topic, which you just brought up, is near and dear to my heart, and I find it fascinating.
Yeah, Christian, I think that's a great, summary. You immediately sort of jumped right into the whole point, not about things like change management and blah, 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 but it was one of culture. And, I've always thought sort of in line with what you were saying toward the end there about you either understand the significance of culture, you don't, but I think decline is a choice. Right? It's not like, oh man, hey, that company was just unfortunately in a bad spot at a bad time, right? It's like, no, you choose to stay in an industry or a sector that is declining. You choose to ignore these issues that are bubbling up around the company. You choose to accept the fact that some percentage of people, and I don't know, Christian, what percentage of a team does it take, 5%, 10%, 50% to hold something back? Or you choose to believe that because you were successful in the past, you're somehow entitled to be successful in the future. So I think, what you're saying there, and I hope you'll dig into that a little bit more about sort of how you move through that, how you get that culture going in the right direction, because it isn't just the magnitude of the change that companies are going through right now, as you described it, the changes in the outside world, and then correspondingly what businesses have to do to adapt to that. So it isn't just the magnitude, which is quite extreme, but it's also the intensity of it and the time scale. They don't have 18, 24 months, put together a panel and do some focus group, blah, 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 all that stuff. They got to fix this right now because their customers certainly have other choices. And just as important today, the great people on your team have lots of different places where they could go and do stuff. So I am puzzled sometimes at the lack of either awareness or urgency about this. And Christian, maybe it's both.
It might be both. Let me take a step back, and I'm not. I have a tendency to sound like I kind of come off as very critical of the executive ranks, particularly CEOs. And I am actually. I'm usually very critical of them, and there's a number of different reasons. But that we have to look at what's facing these folks, right, and facing these companies. It's not just technological changes. It's not just Bitcoin and metaverse, etc. It's not just geopolitical changes. I mean, we have wars, shifting power dynamics, supply chains. I mean, it's not just that. It's not just social changes, attention spans, various movements, etc. It's all of those things.
Yeah.
And when you combine the number of changes and the speed of these changes, it's just a huge task. That's why we have to be very, very thoughtful, very circumspect on how we create organizations that are very adaptable, because there's one other thing that's changing that's affecting companies probably more than anything that I didn't even just list, not directly at least, and that's their markets are changing.
Yeah.
And so these companies and these leaders are just overwhelmed with all this complexity and the complexities of these various forces creating these various change or need for change across the entire spectrum of their operations in many cases. And it's hard. But when you just keep swatting the mole, it's a game of whack-a-mole versus taking a step back and going, okay, how do I really future-proof my organization? And you don't realize the the best way to future-proof your organization is to invest in the people that are a part of it in the first place and build the culture that allow you to navigate these increasingly gale-like forces of winds of change. Then you're going to be one of those 40% that we were referring to earlier.
Yeah.
It's hard, but I'll say it this: right now, more than ever, the most strategic thing that most firms can do is invest in their people. Now, this is not something that companies want to do. I mean, a lot of companies' training and development budgets aren't zero, but they round to zero, right? Let's be honest about it. Why do you think people are so disenfranchised, disengaged, right, at their workplace? I mean, they don't see career ops and they're not being developed towards the next opportunity either. Every single organization should follow that old adage. I don't know where it came from exactly. Make their people ready to go, but anxious to stay. And if you're deliberate about it, you're investing in your people and you're investing in a future that they can see themselves a part of in terms of what they're delivering to the market and the value that they're creating for the market and the communities and the societies they serve, then you have a better chance. Maybe you're more in the 60% than in that 40%. Okay. And by the way, if I may add, in that poll, they just said 40% wouldn't exist. Of the 60%, a lot of them would probably almost certainly degrade it. I mean, that, there's only today, I think only 10% of the companies that were originally part of the Fortune 500 are even still part of it. So, I mean, I think the point is, it's not like 60% win and 40% lose. They're all deeply challenged. Just 40% just completely lose and are wiped off the map, so to speak.
Well, Christian, again, I think that would be a very specific lesson that a lot of people could say, like, well, what is my training and development budget? What are we doing? How are we investing in skills? And, maybe very clear-headedly, objectively, grade yourself on that. And if the best you can say is, well, it hasn't gone down from last year, that's not enough. If it was, it was pitiful last year and it's pitiful this year, well, I think inflation has torn that down some. But I think, to go back to what you were saying about CEOs, I think if you are hard on the CEOs from time to time, it's because there are some who aren't adapting to the change, right? You choose to be a CEO, or you accept that responsibility, then you got to take that responsibility. And one of the things that's happening now versus 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years ago, your job was so different, right? It was sort of preserve what we have incrementally, build it up a little bit. Today, it is wildly different. It's all those changes that you enumerated there. And then you got the external changes that are crazy that you have to deal with. So if you're not ready as a CEO to handle that, that don't take the job. And if you do change it, then I think it is incumbent on them to recognize that technology might be part of the solution to get out of it. But the technology is the, what comes after the plan's put together. And I think, as you said, it comes around to the people. So if some CEO moves in, an organization's faltering, it sort of started this slow decline, they bring in a new CEO, what advice would you give her or him about how to start that investment in the people?
Well, you never ask the easy questions. Let me.
You don't get easy questions. Heck no.
Yeah, well, these are big questions, and of course, that the answer to that very much is sort of situationally dependent. Like it might be very different for Ernst and Young versus, I don't know, a manufacturer that has a lot of hourly labor in plants and factories. So I think it's largely situationally dependent, but I think there's some good rules of thumb that we consider. First and foremost, I do believe that. I'll just say it. Okay. You hear almost every company say, oh, our greatest asset is our people. We would be nowhere without you folks. It's the right thing to say because it's actually true. But there's a difference. It's why we have that saying, by the way. There's talking the talk and walking the walk. And mostly they pay lip service to it.
Yeah.
We've talked about this on a previous podcast, and I feel like I'm on the verge of like insulting everybody in the corporate structures today. It's not my intent. There's so many great companies and so many great leaders out there, but there's a reason why. Like, I don't call HR human resources anymore. No, it stopped being human resources a long time ago. It's now human resistance. Okay. Human resources in most organizations is about hiring and firing. It's not a friend to the people that work there, and the people know it. And that's the foul. That's the thing that cracks me up the most, is that they think that by saying these things and having a human resources group that, you know, does all these things for the employees, which is almost nothing. Like, for example, hey, you know what? Create this business resource group around, I don't know, veterans or a certain minority group or whatever. Oh, by the way, you get no money, you get no time, you get nothing. Go ahead, do it on your own. Oh, that's like saying, hey, I'm going to help you by just saying, go do whatever you want. I'm not going to pay attention to it. But that's human resources. And I'll give you an example of this in a very simple, almost like a diagram. I wish I could sketch this. The typical corporation is kind of like look at it as a pyramid. And at the top of the pyramid, invariably, especially for for-profit public companies, at the top of that functional pyramid that I'm about to describe is finance. You know, it's the finance, right? And in the center is the core capabilities. It's what it takes to deliver. It's like your technology, et cetera. And at the bottom of the pyramid is the people, like the HR. That's how companies think about how they structure and how they operate. Finance is preeminent, then the capabilities, and then you get to the people. Now, if you were a company that was really kind of thinking about what your question was, how to revert, do something different, you would reverse that. Yeah. You would put people at the top of your organization, then the capabilities that those people lead, and then the thing that is actually most regulated. That's why they have a gap, at least in the United States, right? That is, there shouldn't be a lot of creativity in your finance department. One would hope, although we know that in many cases there is, that would be at the bottom. I mean, it's the most regulated, controlled, and otherwise overseen activity with the least amount of creativity. And so they would be at the bottom, but the companies have it backwards. And so to make a point, though, then to land this thing, I would, if I was going to help some companies think about this thing differently, I would do a number of different things. First of all, I already said one thing. You actually make culture a fundamental part of your strategy. It is your people and culture and everything it takes to create culture, by the way, which is not slides and parties and golf outings and BS like that, but behaviors, right, that drive culture. I would spend a lot of time and energy on that. But then something very simple. Why not? I mean, why is it so hard to imagine a company spending, industry dependent, of course, 4% of their revenue on their people?
Yeah.
Why can't you do that?
They're the most important asset after all, right? That's the slogan.
Well, that's what they say, but then they don't back it up. I mean, so if you're going to tell me that my people are the most important, this is the most important asset we have is our people. Everybody that hears that, if you're listening to this and you've got a boss or a CEO that said that, you go to the bottom of the pyramid, hopefully the bottom of the pyramid, and you look at the financial statements and find out exactly how much percentage of revenue is being spent on training and development. And when that number isn't zero, but it rounds to zero, it's a lie. And then, by the way, go find your next job. Because the last thing we need is, a terrible thing is to work for an organization that doesn't want to invest in you at all. Okay. Worse than that is to work for an organization that doesn't want to invest in you at all, but then lies about it by saying you're the most important thing there is out there. Quit. Go find another job. Don't quiet quit. Yeah. Really quit. Quit and go find a place where you can believe in it, want to work. And even if you don't want to make it to your life passion, you want to work from 9 to 5 to get a fair paycheck for a fair amount of work, for a good light work-life balance, good on you. But you should still be invested in, because there's always an opportunity for you to learn more, do more, and be better, even in a 9 to 5 scenario.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hey, Christian, I'm thinking about that point you made there. The best sort of companies will, how did you exactly put that? Make your people ready to go, but
anxious
convince them or persuade them to stay. Yeah. Get them up to that level where that where the problem you have is, gosh, we got so many great candidates for every position. We've got so many high potential people. We've got so many overperformers. Do we have opportunities for them? That's a real good problem to have, instead of that other one of like, when people talk about attrition, how do we manage attrition, right? Just accepting that, hey, this is not a real good place to work, and we're going to bleed people all the time, and oh well, we'll try to be we'll try not to die from the bleeding there, instead of fixing what's causing the bleeding. Yeah, it's almost comical sometimes thinking about this.
It's comical if it wasn't so painful. And I'll
Yes.
just say it because maybe I'm edgy today. It's stupid. Every one of these organizations that's sitting there, and I've had an opportunity to work with a number of them. Okay. And they go, oh, you know what? We got this attrition problem. I mean, in the last number of months and quarters and years, our attrition rate has gone, it's doubled. One company, this company, everybody knows this company, is in the 20 something percent of attrition. And they're sitting down and they're like, this is why they're leaving. I mean, this is what they're going to. They're going to more money. They're going to where a friend works. They're going to this, and they enumerate all the stuff that they get on their exit interviews. And of course, with their keen insight, being part of the human resistance movement within the firm, and then they go, "This is what they're going to," and they don't stop and flat out be honest with themselves and say, actually, it's not what they're going to; it's what they're going away from.
Yeah.
And what they're going away from, in many cases, is organizations that have terrible leadership, terrible management, right? That don't invest in the people, and they just see their lives as a day-to-day drudgery from one thing to the next. So when you feel that way, and then someone offers you even just a measly 10%, increase in your salary, you can bet your ass that grass looks greener. It looks a hell of a lot greener, because I might be going from my current situation to another poor leader and another poor manager where I have limited decision rights, but I don't really know that for sure. And at least the chance is better than what I have. And no matter what, even if it's the same, at least I get 10% more salary for having to endure these chuckleheads. So yeah, of course, they'll do it every time. But the companies aren't honest with themselves. It's not where they're going to as much as what are they moving away from.
Yeah.
Have these honest conversations with yourself. This is when I get really critical, in case you haven't noticed, of corporations and their executive leaders, because they're not introspective enough. They don't ask those questions. And, you're never, ever, ever going to build a high performance team, by having anything other than a radical candor and an ability to understand and accept criticisms, especially when they're well-deserved.
And Christian, you've talked at other times about this in terms of like an after action report. Okay, the action was a lot of people left. Our attrition continued to go up and up and up. We have no clue what to do about it. So I think in those terms, if your analysis of what's happening is, as you said, where are they going to, you never get to the point about where are they going, what are they running from, because that could hurt you. That could hurt your feelings. It could make you look bad. It could be risky for you. So you just ignore it, and those attrition numbers keep going up, and you can just see it happening. And that's one of those places where I think decline's a choice. So your point there about the candor, the honesty, the courage, the confidence in each other, that we can have these hard conversations to get at the truth, not to make anybody look bad, but to find out, are we going to fix this problem? We have to understand what the problem is, instead of shying away from it and, trying to slam the door shut and hope that nobody looks in the corners. It's anyway, I think there's going to be a lot of companies that have a hard reckoning over the next year or so in this, because the industries are changing so fast, and disruptive companies are coming up who do have or big companies are changing, and they're embracing this new sort of culture about where that goes forward. I think it was IBM that recently said 80% of the jobs we're going to have created in the next 5 years, you won't need a college degree. It just, it's a real thing, instead of no, the form is you must have a 4-year degree. Plus, what do they say, like 15 years at this, 5 years of this? It's nuts. It's driven by some inertia from the past with very, very little or no tangible connection to where things are going in the future. So, Christian, do you have a final thought on this, or something you want to sort of?
Yeah, you want to know what's really nuts? I mean, I can't make this stuff up. I could list 7 companies that I'm talking to at the highest ranks of the companies. I wish if it wasn't for non-disclosures, I would love to get this out there for a lot of people to take this into consideration. This is what's nuts. And I bet you this is a lot of companies. It's a lot of companies. They're looking at the economic headwinds as an opportunity to get those pesky employees back in line. Think about this. The job market's going to constrict in the forecasts of many. I'm not pulling out a crystal ball here. I'm not saying it is. In the forecast of many, they're saying there's going to be a lot of economic turmoil. And we're already seeing a number of companies already going through their first, and even like Lyft just announced another round of layoffs. I mean, this is going on and on and on. And so what these executives are going, oh, you know what? We're just not going to have to worry about the pay thing because, they won't be able to get jobs otherwhere. And the other thing, and they're almost giddy about it. This whole work from home thing, we're going to find the ones that don't want to come in. They're the first ones that we're probably going to have to let go because, they don't want to comply. It's kind of like you're like this. I know I got an idea. No chaos, no crisis can go to waste. We got an economic downturn. Let's really put the screws to the people now that are our greatest asset and that we don't invest in. And by the way, with the economic downturn, all the more reason for us to say, well, we got to pause on the training and development now.
Yeah.
Because we can't really afford it. And, anybody that works for a company that you think has that mentality that is taking some of these steps, some of them are being fairly transparent. I won't even name them here, even though they've made some public statements along the lines of what we're discussing. My suggestion for you is to quit that company right away. Because what they are doing is it's almost like they're looking at these headwinds as just an opportunity to put people back in their rightful place. And that's in a little cube, in a little box, pushing this button every 5 seconds and pulling that lever every 3. Don't speak up. Don't stand out. And for God's sakes, don't make a decision that would make you seem different in any way. You work for one of those companies that's signaling this stuff to the market. Quit now.
Yeah.
Quit now.
Yeah.
So that's what I would add to this rather fiery conversation.
No, Christian, it's been wonderful. And I think just the final point I'd like to ask you to talk about too is leadership today. You've talked about if you're somebody stuck in one of these companies, right? It's like a woolly mammoth and it has 2 or 3 legs in the tar pit and doesn't even know it. Or maybe some people do know it and they don't care, but the leadership, so you've sort of adjust for those people, bail out, get out of those companies, go somewhere where, people love what you're doing and love that energy and passion and difference that you bring. And then what about on the executive side? What would you just tell them about, a final thought to get moving on this?
The first thing I think every executive actually needs to be really focused on is on the market. And we've said this before in so many conversations, but companies tend to focus more on what they do than the people they do it for. Mm-hmm. That's probably the number one reason that 40% are going to drop off the map. Okay, because it's not about what they do or what they need or their problems they have. It's about what we do. And that's completely backwards. But once you establish that, then develop the workforce that has a distinct interest, a passion, and otherwise, at the very, very minimum, a real capability to deliver against those market needs. And as you're doing that, invest mightily in both your leadership development and your leadership capacity. You do those 3 things and you got kind of at a high level of abstraction, you got a winning recipe, because embedded in that is you understand the market and you understand explicitly at detail what the need is. You are getting the people that are going to be able to and have an interest in addressing the needs. Right. And you're developing the leadership capability that's going to keep you following the need, developing those people, and otherwise bringing the full force of everything that brand and those capabilities that brand has, et cetera, to the forefront for a winning combination. Do those 3 things.
Just that, Christian, it sounds good. I don't know what you had on your Wheaties this morning, but do it again next time. This is great because I think you've always bring, such compelling ideas to it. But I think it's important, Christian, that people sense that passion and fire you have in you about these subjects because, again, otherwise there's so many things that can distract us. So many other things we can say, yeah, I'll get to that tomorrow, next week, next month. I'll pass it down the line to somebody else. That's signing a death sentence for a company today. Maybe not to be carried out later this year, next year, but not so long after that. They cannot ignore this. It's deadly.
It's deadly, and maybe they just have to do what I did. I didn't have Wheaties, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. So maybe that's the answer. That's all we have to do.
Well, Christian, my friend, thanks a lot. Sounds good. Always a pleasure to chat with you. And thanks for bringing it hard today. It's a great subject, and it deserved your full fire.
Yes. Well, thank you very much, and thank you all for your patience and listening to me from atop a soapbox. Thank you.
All right, folks. Thanks to all of you for being with us here at Cloud Wars Live. Hope things are going great for you. We'll see you next time.